1 minute for the rebuttal.
Caesar, you said something about the North being the ones that do the industrialization and them starting the revolution, but who helped them with it? For example, like cotton. Where did that come from? The South. Who produced this cotton? The Southerners. Who helped them produce it? The slaves that worked in the cotton gin. So you can't just say it was the Northerners that started the industrial revolution. And Solomon, you said something about us beating them and mistreating the slaves. We only mistreated them because they weren't listening to us. They weren't obeying. And plus, they were considered as property. And Arturo said something about slaves counting as 3/5. So that in the Constitution, so that's saying slaves were allowed because they counted as 3/5 of a person.
The 13th Amendment of the late in 1865 officially abolished slavery, but freed blacks' status in the post-war South remained precarious, and significant challenges waited during the Reconstruction period. Former slaves received the rights of citizenship and equal protection of the Constitution in the 14th Amendment and the right to vote in 15th, but the provisions of the Constitution were often ignored or violated. And it was difficult for former slaves to gain a foothold in the post-war economy thanks to restrictive black codes and regressive contractual arrangements such as sharecropping.
Our ancestors relied on slaves. Without them, we would probably not be in this room right now. Slaves created tools so our lives could be better. They created tools to help us in the war. They created factories were filled with slaves to help us create new things that would help us in our lives. And without that, most of us probably wouldn't survive. And plus, slaves are already in a bad state back home, and we just brought them here, and they just have to work. And we fed them and gave them shelter.
How you said that it was amazing for everyone to have slaves. Well, it's not amazing to beat and rape someone and to treat them like trash. We're all equal, and we vote. This group votes for equality.
Ricardo?
The Americas saw a gigantic increase in production, and therefore it was profitable. The increase in production was only possible because of the immense amount of cheap labor supplied by slavery. Slavery was very beneficial for the Southerners, and like Salome said, that they were treated like trash and that it wasn't good. Well, since we're talking in the time period of 1800s, back then people thought it was actually a good thing, and they would be actually lucky to have, well, not lucky, but like in a way that they would have clothes and food for them, and some people are actually poor and don't have that.
Oh, sorry if I rushed through this, I don't know. Pretzel said that cheap slavery, but the definition of slavery is free slavery. Yeah, you said something about this work is cheap slavery. You can't respond. But the definition of slavery is free work. You said that they help people with work, they could just get employees. You said that they called slaves employees, but they don't get paid. They only beat them for being bad. What did they do? They were tired of working all day. Gabriel said slavery was amazing. I'm not even going to respond to that. He said everyone has slaves, but some people were poor and they couldn't have slaves. He said slaves is a blessing from above, but Moses in Egypt freed slaves. The Bible says it's good but Moses once again freed slaves from Egypt. Machines, never mind. Now Ricardo said that. You can do the rest.
Alex, you see that? Alex?
George, you said that slavery was a necessary evil, and it's not. Because, like I said before, the cotton gin and tobacco farms will die, and they wouldn't be productive. So they're very, very necessary, and we wouldn't kind of be here. And they got paid with food and shelter. And it's better than being off with without a job or anything and just being on the streets being neglected by everybody. At least with us they had, like I said, food and shelter and clothes on their back. So they're better off with us and on the streets.
Another U.S. Congress outlawed the African slave trade in 1808. The domestic trade flourished, and the slave population in the U.S. nearly tripled over the next 50 years. By 1860, it had reached nearly 4 million, with more than half of them living in the so-called cotton-producing states of the South. Slaves in the antebellum South consisted of about 1/3 of the Southern population.
Okay, pause for a minute.